It was a Friday evening when the first crack split open the perfect image I had built around my life. My name is Daniel, I'm 34, and until that night, I believed in things like loyalty and shared dreams. My wife, Lauren, seemed like a part of me, almost too familiar, as if betrayal couldn't even find a place between us. How small and blind I must have been to miss the warning signs burning right in front of me. The company had thrown a huge celebration for my promotion to director, the kind of night that comes once in a lifetime. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls of the rented banquet hall. The music was loud but elegant, laughter spilled from every corner, and clinking glasses caught the light like stars. I wasn't nervous or modest, I had earned this. Blood, sweat, sacrifices, all leading to this night. I wanted to soak it all in, remember every detail. But Lauren? She was nowhere to be found when they called my name for the speech. When I finally spotted her across the room, she wasn't watching me. She wasn't clapping. She wasn't even smiling. She was leaning against a wall in the corner, whispering too closely to a man I didn't recognize. He was dressed sharp, but there was something about the way he leaned in, the way her hand grazed his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world, that sent a cold spear straight through my ribs. I should have looked away. I should have focused on the applause still ringing in my ears. Instead, I watched her laugh, a laugh I hadn't heard in months, and then saw her slip her hand into his like it was second nature. Something primal twisted inside me. I didn't even hear half of what I said during the speech. My voice sounded steady, but my heart was thrashing inside my chest like a caged animal. The whole room blurred into an endless sea of faces, none of them hers. When it was finally over, when the handshakes and congratulations thinned out, I found her again. This time, she stood right in the center of a group, glass of champagne raised high, recounting some story that had everyone around her roaring with laughter. Dan thinks success is measured in hours at the office, she said loudly without a glance in my direction. Some people think ambition is attractive. I think it's exhausting. More laughter. My colleagues. My friends. And still, she didn't even look at me. I stood there, 10 feet away, invisible. I wasn't her husband tonight. I wasn't even an afterthought. The night twisted sharply from there. I caught more too much. The way she brushed the stranger's shoulder, the way she leaned in when she spoke to him, the sly look he gave her when he thought no one was watching. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. Something was happening right in front of me and nobody cared enough to hide it. By the time I cornered her near the exit, the rage inside me was a living thing. Who is he? I asked quietly, keeping my voice low enough so the few lingering guests wouldn't turn their heads. Lauren gave a careless shrug, swirling the champagne in her glass like she hadn't just spat on everything we'd built together. Relax, Dan. He's just someone who actually listens. That one sentence detonated something inside me. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the woman I had married. The woman I had defended against every doubt and whisper. And here she was, arms folded, eyes gleaming with a mocking light, like I was some pitiful figure begging for scraps. When I didn't respond immediately, she gave a lazy smile, stepped closer, and added under her breath, "Besides, you're not exactly thrilling anymore." It was so casual. So cruel. Like she had practiced it in front of a mirror. I left the party without saying goodbye. I didn't trust myself not to make a scene, and somehow, even after everything, some small pathetic part of me still wanted to keep my dignity intact. As I walked into the cold night, the city roaring around me, I realized I didn't even know where she had gone. She didn't come after me. She didn't call. For all I knew, she went back inside and laughed some more. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark of our living room, the city lights crawling along the ceiling, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the man who got pitted behind closed doors. I wasn't going to swallow this betrayal and pretend we could work it out. She had humiliated me at the peak of my success. Now it was my turn to shatter her life into pieces so small, she'd never be able to glue them back together again. And the first step would be finding out just how deep her lies went. The morning after the party, everything in our house felt hollow, like walking through a museum of a life that had already ended. Her coat was thrown over the back of the chair, her shoes kicked off in the hallway, her perfume still lingering faintly in the air, but Lauren herself was nowhere to be seen. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched, staring at the front door as if it might open by itself and deliver some explanation, some twisted apology. Hours passed. When she finally stumbled in just after noon, sunglasses on despite the gray clouds outside, her hair messier than usual, she didn't even flinch at the sight of me sitting there. She just dropped her purse onto the counter and sighed dramatically like I was the burden. "You're up early," she said, voice flat. "I never went to bed." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't apologize. Not this time. She peeled off her jacket, moving sluggishly, deliberately ignoring the thick silence pressing between us. "Where were you?" I asked, not because I didn't already know the answer, but because I needed to hear the lie from her lips. Needed to see if she would even try to salvage the wreckage she had created. She shrugged, moving to the fridge as if the conversation bored her. "Crashed at Melanie's. Too much champagne, didn't want to drive." The casualness of it nearly made me laugh. Melanie, her best friend, who, conveniently, had posted photos from the party all night, none of which included Lauren after 10 p.m. I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I stood up, walked slowly over to her, and placed my phone on the counter between us. The screen was open to a picture, Lauren, outside the banquet hall, locked in an intimate embrace with the stranger from the night before. His hand on the small of her back, her mouth inches from his neck. Captured perfectly by one of my colleagues who had seen them when leaving and sent it to me with a simple message. "You should know." Lauren froze for a fraction of a second. Just enough for the smallest crack to split her mask. But then she rolled her eyes. As if I had shown her a receipt for groceries she didn't remember buying. "Oh my God, Dan. It's not what it looks like," she said, tossing her head back with a short, humorless laugh. "Are you seriously playing the jealous husband right now? Grow up." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just kept my eyes locked on her, forcing her to fill the silence. She huffed, crossing her arms. "He's just a client. We were talking." "Jesus, you're embarrassing yourself." The absurdity of it almost stole my breath away. A client? Whispering in the shadows, hands wandering, disappearing until noon. Was she even trying? "Did you spend the night with him?" I asked, my voice so calm it scared even me. She looked at me then. Really looked, and something in her expression hardened. She smiled, slow and cold. "And what if I did?" The room tilted. My hand gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. There it was. No more lies. No more games. Just brutal, deliberate cruelty. She had made her choice, and she wasn't even sorry. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. This wasn't the girl I had proposed to under the fireworks 3 summers ago. This wasn't the woman who had cried in my arms when we bought our first home. This was a stranger who wore Lauren's face like a mask and looked at me like I was something she had outgrown and was ashamed to admit she had ever needed. I pushed the phone closer to her. "How long?" Her lips twisted, as if she found the whole thing amusing now. She tapped one finger against her chin, pretending to think. "Honestly," she said brightly, "I lost count." She picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder like the conversation was already over. "Maybe if you had been a little more interesting, Daniel, I wouldn't have had to find excitement elsewhere." She walked out the door without looking back, her laughter trailing behind her like smoke. I stood there, feeling something inside me snap in two, not heartbreak, not sadness. Something older. Something sharper. Rage pure and clean. This wasn't going to end with quiet suffering and whispered divorce papers. Lauren had thrown me away like garbage at the height of my success. Now I was going to return the favor publicly, precisely, and with a ruthlessness she had no idea I was capable of. And the first step was already taking shape in my mind. The house felt like a tomb after she left. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, not moving, letting the silence crawl over me. There was no shouting match, no desperate apology, no begging for forgiveness. Just the door slamming shut, the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air like a taunt. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to scream. I wanted clarity. I wanted precision. Lauren thought she had one. She thought she had humiliated me beyond retaliation. She thought I would curl up and vanish quietly from her life, leaving her free to parade around town on the arm of her next conquest. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I stood up slowly, grabbed a notepad from the counter drawer, and started writing. Not angry scrawls. Not desperate scribbles. Cold, methodical planning. First step, find out everything. Second step, control the narrative. Third step, destroy what she valued most, not with fists, not with yelling, but by taking apart the image she clung to so desperately, brick by brick, in front of everyone who mattered to her. Lauren's entire existence was built around appearances. The flawless social media accounts, the endless brunches with her circle of overgroomed friends, the career she had stitched together more out of charm than skill. She lived for the admiration, the envy, the illusion that her life was better than everyone else's. I didn't need to touch her physically to ruin her. I just had to expose her. The opportunity came faster than I expected. That night, while lying on the couch staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. You deserve to know the whole truth. Call me. Attached was a blurry photo of Lauren at what looked like a hotel bar, leaning close to the same man from the party, her hand resting too intimately on his knee. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks before my promotion night. I hesitated for a moment. Could be a trap, a prank, some cruel joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I called. A woman answered. Her voice was sharp, impatient. Is this Daniel? Yeah. I'm Chloe, she said. I'm his girlfriend. Or, I was. Until about 2 hours ago. The pieces clicked together faster than I could process them. Apparently, the man Lauren had been seeing wasn't just some random fling. He was someone else's long-term boyfriend, someone who had now blown up his own relationship by getting caught. Chloe had gone through his phone. Found everything. Messages. Photos. Plans. You're not the only one she screwed over, Chloe said. You want the full collection? I didn't hesitate. Send it all. By midnight, I had an entire gallery of Lauren's betrayal in my hands. Screenshots of text conversations so vulgar, so dismissive of me that my hands shook scrolling through them. Plans for secret weekend getaways. Snide jokes about me being too boring to notice and perfect husband material if she ever got desperate. Every pixel carved another piece out of me, but I didn't look away. Pain was temporary. What I was about to do would be permanent. Chloe and I agreed to meet the next day at a quiet cafe. She was just as angry, just as determined to make sure neither Lauren nor her charming lover got away with pretending they were victims when the truth came out. As I sat back on the couch, planning, something inside me settled. There was no saving this marriage. There was no fixing what had been smashed into dust. All that was left was the reckoning. A reckoning that would hit Lauren where it would hurt the most. Not just in private, but in front of every smug friend, every shallow coworker, every fake admirer who had ever clapped for her. The seeds were planted. All that remained was to let them grow, and when the time was right, pull the whole rotten garden out by its roots. The next morning the sky was smeared with heavy gray clouds, pressing down on the city like a lid on a boiling pot. Felt right. I sat at the cafe, a plain black coffee cooling untouched in front of me. Across the table, Chloe tapped her fingernails against her phone case, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. She wasn't the kind of woman who usually got involved in revenge. I could see it in the tightness of her shoulders, the way she kept glancing at the clock like she was about to back out. But when she looked at me, something steadied inside her. Maybe it was the same thing I saw in my own reflection that morning. That grim, hollow determination you only get after someone you trusted carves you open without a second thought. We don't get second chances at this, she said quietly. We won't need one, I answered. She slid a thumb drive across the table. Everything's on here. Messages, screenshots, voice notes, even a couple of videos they were too stupid to hide. I pocketed it without hesitation. We spent the next 2 hours building a plan, careful, surgical, designed not just to expose them, but to destroy the lies they had wrapped around themselves. Not shouting accusations in a parking lot. Not a screaming match in a restaurant. No, this had to be something they couldn't spin or recover from. Lauren was due to attend a charity gala that weekend, the kind of event she lived for. Rented designer dresses, professional photographers, endless Instagram posts. She had been talking about it for weeks, planning her outfit, practicing her poses in the mirror when she thought I wasn't looking. Everyone she cared about would be there. Everyone she wanted to impress. Perfect. We made it simple. Chloe and I created an anonymous email account. Attached every piece of evidence we had, organized chronologically, carefully captioned with timestamps and brutal clarity. No ugly rants. No obvious fingerprints. Just the cold, undeniable truth laid bare. And then we set up a mass mailing list. Every single person who mattered in Lauren's carefully curated life. Her colleagues, her boss, her best friends, her yoga instructor, her clients, even the charity board members. The night before the gala, while Lauren was busy taking selfies in the living room in 2 different dresses, sending pictures to some group chat for urgent fashion advice, I scheduled the email. It would go out precisely 30 minutes after the gala started. Enough time for her to walk in, smiling, soaking in the attention. Enough time for her to believe, for one last blissful moment, that she was untouchable. Then the floor would vanish under her feet. Watching her that evening was surreal. She hummed as she curled her hair, complained about a chipped nail, fussed over which necklace looked more effortless. She kissed me on the cheek absently on her way out, like we were still just another happy married couple. Like she hadn't gutted me days ago with a smile. I didn't say a word. I just smiled back, like the fool she still believed I was. When the door clicked shut behind her, I sat down on the couch and waited. 30 minutes. 25. 20. I wondered if she would feel it, the ground shifting under her, before the phone started buzzing. If she would notice the tight smiles, the sudden looks. 15 minutes. I imagined her posing for pictures, holding a glass of champagne, laughing that hollow, fake laugh she had perfected. I imagined her scanning the room for approval, not knowing the countdown had already begun. 10 minutes. I opened a beer and set it on the coffee table without drinking it. My hands were steady. My mind was sharp. There was no guilt, no second-guessing. She had set the fire. I was just making sure it burned clean. 5 minutes. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of it all press down on me one last time. The betrayal, the humiliation, the coldness in her eyes. I let it all wash over me, not fighting it, not pushing it away. Then I picked up my phone, opened the email app, hit send. Somewhere across town, Lauren was smiling for the cameras, frozen in that perfect, glittering moment. And somewhere inside that moment, everything she had built was already beginning to rot from the inside out. I didn't stay glued to my phone waiting for the fallout. I didn't need to. The truth has a way of moving faster than even the loudest lie. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, my phone was lighting up with notifications not from Lauren, not yet, but from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Short, sharp messages. What the hell happened? Are you okay? Jesus, man. And then finally, hours later, Lauren herself. First, a missed call. Then another. Then a string of frantic texts. Call me now. You don't understand what you've done. We can fix this if you stop it. No apology. No confession. Just panic that her mask had been torn off in front of the entire world she had worked so hard to deceive. I didn't answer. I turned off my phone, leaned back on the couch, and let the silence swallow me whole. The night stretched out before me, endless, quiet, and clean. Tomorrow there would be chaos. Tomorrow the real fallout would begin, and I would be ready for every second of it. The house was dark when she finally stumbled through the front door. I stayed seated on the couch, the only light coming from a single floor lamp in the corner, casting long, stretched shadows across the room. I heard her heels click against the hardwood, frantic, uneven, as if she wasn't sure whether to run or fight. "Daniel," she gasped out, slamming the door behind her. "We need to talk. Right now." I didn't move. I just watched her. Her hair was a mess, frizzy from the humid night air. Her makeup smudged beneath her eyes where tears had either already fallen or were threatening to. The beautiful, polished Lauren everyone admired had been stripped away. What stood before me now was raw desperation wearing a cracked, trembling mask. She threw her clutch onto the coffee table and stalked toward me. "Why would you do this?" she demanded, her voice shrill, cracking at the edges. "You've ruined everything." I tilted my head slightly, still silent, studying her like an insect pinned to a board. She hated that. Hated that I wasn't shouting, wasn't throwing things. Hated that she couldn't read me anymore. "You ruined everything," I said finally, my voice low, steady. "I just made sure everyone else could see it." Her hands flew up in a wild gesture, pacing now, too agitated to stand still. "They're treating me like some kind of criminal. Like I'm trash. People I've known for years, turning their backs on me, acting like I'm some disgusting thing." I let her words hang there. Disgusting. Not wrong. Not guilty. Just unwanted now that the mask was gone. "I built a life, Daniel. You think you can just destroy it because you're hurt? Because you're some bitter little man who can't take it when a woman," she caught herself, but it was too late. The truth slipped free of her mouth like poison. I stood up slowly. Walked toward her until we were just inches apart. "You didn't just cheat, Lauren," I said quietly, almost gently. "You mocked me. You made me a joke to my friends, my coworkers. You dragged me through the dirt at the highest point of my life just because you were bored. And now you're upset because the world sees you for what you are." Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming out, only rapid, shallow breaths. For the first time, real fear flickered in her eyes. "You don't get to play the victim," I said, stepping past her, heading toward the staircase. "Not this time." She grabbed my arm as I moved past. Her nails dug into my skin, desperate. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, the fight draining out of her. "We can fix this. You and me. No one else matters. We can start over. No more mistakes. I'll be better. I swear." I turned and looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in months, I felt absolutely nothing. No love. No hate. Just a quiet, cold understanding. "There's no we anymore," I said. I pulled my arm free, and she stumbled back a step like I had struck her. The finality of it must have hit her then, because her face crumpled, and she dropped to her knees right there in the hallway, sobbing, clutching at my pant leg like a drowning woman grabbing at driftwood. "I'm sorry," she choked out between broken sobs. "I didn't mean it. I was stupid. Please, Daniel, don't leave me like this. Don't throw everything away. I love you. I love you." The words, once so powerful, now sounded hollow, pathetic. I knelt down to her level, lowering my voice so she would have no choice but to hear every word, every syllable. "You didn't love me," I said. "You loved what I gave you. The life, the image, the safety. But you never loved me." She tried to argue, but I cut her off. "If you had, you wouldn't have treated me like a spare part when it suited you. You wouldn't have laughed about me behind my back. You wouldn't have thrown yourself at the first man who promised you more excitement." She sobbed harder, collapsing onto the floor completely, makeup staining her face, hair wild around her like a broken crown. It should have hurt to see her like that. It should have torn something inside me. But it didn't. She had made her choices. Now she could live with them. I stood up, turned, and walked upstairs without looking back. As I climbed, her voice chased me, desperate and cracked. "Please, Daniel, please don't leave me alone. Don't do this to me." I didn't answer. I didn't stop. She had left me alone the night she chose someone else. She had done this to herself. When I reached the bedroom, I closed the door behind me, shutting out her cries, her lies, her chaos. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. Tomorrow, the next phase of the plan would begin. I wasn't just leaving her. I was taking back everything she thought she could keep. And she still had no idea how much she was about to lose. I barely slept that night, but it wasn't the kind of restless tossing that comes from heartbreak. It was planning, calculating, sharpening the edges of what came next. By morning, Lauren's side of the bed was untouched. At some point during the night, her sobbing had stopped. Maybe she passed out on the floor downstairs. Maybe she left. I didn't care enough to check. I took a long, deliberate shower, dressed in a crisp shirt and dark jeans, and packed a single overnight bag. No drama, no shouting, no demands for explanation. Just quiet, efficient severance. I didn't bother packing much. Most of the things in that house felt poisoned now anyway. As I zipped the bag shut, I heard the front door creak open downstairs. Light, cautious footsteps. She was still here. I ignored it. She no longer mattered. There was one more thing I needed to do before I walked away completely. Lauren's career was built like a house of cards, fake charm, favors traded behind closed doors, and an image of integrity she clung to like a security blanket. Her marketing agency was small but cliquish, obsessed with appearances. Reputation was everything. And now, thanks to Chloe's thoroughness, I had exactly what I needed to crush it. I spent the morning drafting a formal, polite letter addressed to the partners at Lauren's firm. No rants, no accusations. Just a careful explanation that one of their top representatives had been engaging in ethically questionable behavior with a client, creating a potential conflict of interest that could threaten the company's credibility. Attached were select screenshots, the ones that made it clear she had mixed personal entanglements with client relations, enough to raise serious concerns without looking like petty revenge. I didn't even send it from my personal email. I paid for a clean, anonymous legal forwarding service to handle it. Professional. Untouchable. When I finally hit send, it didn't feel like vengeance. Felt like closure. Like pulling the last stitch on a wound too rotten to heal. I slung the overnight bag over my shoulder, grabbed my car keys, and headed downstairs. Lauren was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket like a refugee from her own disaster. Her eyes bloodshot, her phone clutched tight in both hands. She looked up when she heard me. Her face was raw, stripped of all the usual defenses. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice small, hoarse. "Out," I said simply. "You can't just leave," she whispered. "We have to talk." "We talked," I said. "You chose." She scrambled up, almost knocking the chair over, reaching out to me like she could physically pull me back into the life she had already set on fire. "Please," she said, her voice cracking wide open. "We can fix this. We can pretend it never happened. I'll do anything. Anything you want." It was almost pathetic enough to make me pause. Almost. I looked at her for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, everything we were supposed to be. And then I shook my head. "You don't get to rewrite the ending, Lauren," I said. "You tore this down with your own hands. Now you can sit in the ruins." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I just walked past her, the way she had walked past my loyalty, my trust, my love. She stood frozen in the hallway, trembling, silent. As I stepped outside into the sharp morning air, I didn't look back. I drove to a hotel across town and checked in under my full name. No hiding, no shame. I didn't need to hide from the truth. She did. Hours later, as I sat in a clean, unfamiliar room flipping through TV channels without seeing any of them, my phone buzzed. I ignored the first few messages. But then, curiosity winning out, I finally checked. Not Lauren this time. Her boss. A single, curt message. "We will be addressing this situation internally. Thank you for bringing it to our attention." Beneath it, a forwarded email. Lauren had been placed under investigation pending review. Effective immediately, she was suspended without pay. I set the phone down carefully on the nightstand and leaned back against the headboard. The first crack had spread through her professional world. Soon the rest would follow. The version of Lauren who lived in carefully filtered Instagram photos, who gave fake advice about trust and honesty at brunches, who built a career on being the sparkling, untouchable golden girl, that Lauren was already gone. She just didn't know it yet. Tomorrow, she would wake up and find herself standing in the wreckage. And when she tried to call for help, she would find nothing waiting for her. Not friends. Not a job. Not a husband. Only the truth. And the truth doesn't catch you when you fall. The next day came with an eerie, unnatural quiet. The city outside buzzed and moved as always, but for me, it felt like I was watching everything through a thick pane of glass. Separate. Removed. I sat on the hotel balcony with a coffee cooling in my hand, scrolling through the news on my phone. Somewhere around noon, Lauren finally made her move. She posted a long, rambling message on social media, a carefully staged selfie of her wrapped in a blanket, mascara deliberately smudged just enough to look tragic but still photogenic. The caption was a masterpiece of half-truths and martyrdom. Some people will try to tear you down when they can't control you. In choosing peace, growth, forgiveness, no mention of betrayal. No admission of the lies. Just vague, passive-aggressive victimhood. Comments flooded in immediately. Some offering sympathy, others asking pointed questions she carefully ignored. I watched it unfold, detached, almost amused. Lauren was playing the only card she had left, trying to paint herself as the misunderstood heroine of her own tragedy. But the problem was, the evidence against her wasn't hearsay. It wasn't rumors. It was cold, documented fact. By the evening, cracks had started appearing even in her curated support circle. Friends shed once manipulated with fake kindness started pulling away. Comments disappeared. Entire profiles that used to flood her pictures with heart emojis went silent. And then she did something that sealed her fate completely. Lauren showed up at my hotel. I heard the knock around 7 p.m. 3 short, desperate raps against the door. I didn't have to guess who it was. I stood inside, watching her through the peephole for a long moment. She looked wrecked, pale, shaking, her eyes red from crying, but still wearing that defiant tilt of the chin she used when she thought she could still win. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to reclaim what she thought still belonged to her. I opened the door, just enough for her to see me, but didn't step aside. "Dan, please," she said immediately, her voice raw. "Let me explain." "You explained enough already," I said, my voice calm. She pushed against the door lightly, trying to come in, but I didn't move. "I know you're angry," she rushed on, wringing her hands. "I get it. I messed up. I was stupid. But we can fix it. We can tell everyone it was just misunderstandings. Fake messages. We can spin it. Damage control." Her eyes shone with frantic hope. "And then what?" I asked quietly. "We pretend everything's fine? We pretend you didn't betray everything we built because you got bored?" She flinched at that, but her jaw tightened stubbornly. "People forget, Dan," she said, voice sharp now. "They always do. A few months, a new project, a few happy pictures, and it'll all be behind us. You don't have to throw your life away because of a mistake. Our life, that she had treated like a piece of old jewelry she could trade the moment something shinier caught her eye. I let the silence stretch until she shifted nervously. "You didn't come here for me," I said finally. "You came here because you're scared. Scared of being left with nothing. Scared of facing who you really are without someone standing next to you to make you look good." Her face twisted, a crack appearing in the perfect victim mask she had worked so hard to rebuild. "That's not true," she hissed. But even she didn't believe it anymore. "You're not sorry you did it," I said. "You're sorry you got caught." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stepped back, my hand tightening on the edge of the door. "This conversation is over, Lauren," I said. "Our life together is over." She reached out, desperate, and grabbed the edge of the door. "Please, Dan," she whispered, tears slipping free. "Don't leave me. I'll lose everything." Her voice broke apart on the last word. Everything. As if only now she realized just how thoroughly the ground had been ripped out from under her. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just looked her in the eyes and said the one thing that sealed the coffin completely. "You already did." Then I closed the door, slowly, deliberately, in her face. I stood there, listening as her sobs crumbled into silence outside, listening as her world finally, truly, collapsed. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, like I had washed off months, no years of lies and illusions, and finally stood free in my own skin. Lauren would leave eventually, and when she did, she would walk back into a world that no longer bent itself around her smile, no longer excused her betrayals. A world that saw her now exactly as she was. Not a heroine, not a victim, just a woman who thought she could burn down a life and dance in the ashes only to find out the fire was still burning, and now she was standing in it alone. Lauren didn't knock again after that night. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she realized no performance, no tears, no desperate promises would erase what she had done or what I had already set in motion. The days that followed were strangely calm. I moved out of the hotel after 2 nights and into a short-term rental, a small loft downtown with tall windows and creaky floors. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't polished. But it was mine. It didn't smell like old perfume. It didn't echo with the ghost of a marriage already dead long before the truth came out. For the first time in years, I didn't have to check my words, my reactions, my face. I didn't have to live in fear of disappointing someone who had decided long ago that I was never enough. Meanwhile, Lauren's life continued its slow, steady collapse. Word spread faster than even I expected. The email Chloe and I had sent triggered not just gossip but real consequences. Clients began pulling their accounts from Lauren's firm. Her boss, under pressure from board members concerned about professional ethics, made the suspension permanent. She wasn't just out of a job. She was blacklisted. One by one, the bridges she had so carefully built on charm and half-truths collapsed into ash. Brunch invitations dried up. Friendships she thought were unbreakable disappeared without warning. No dramatic goodbyes. No arguments. Just cold silence. It was almost surgical. Precise. Poetic. I didn't watch it unfold obsessively. I didn't spend my nights stalking her profiles, hunting for signs of her suffering. The rare glimpses that floated to me were enough. A tagged photo removed. A mutual friend suddenly unfollowing her. A cryptic, sad little quote she posted about finding strength through adversity, with not a single like underneath it. But even as she fell, I focused forward. I started going to the gym again. Not because I needed revenge body nonsense, but because it felt good to take care of myself without her judgmental glances, without the subtle digs she used to slip into conversations. "You're working out again?" she would ask, laughing lightly. "Trying to relive your college glory days?" No more of that now. I started reconnecting with people too. Old friends I hadn't seen in years because Lauren never clicked with them, and I had quietly let those friendships die to keep the peace. They welcomed me back without questions, without demands. Felt like waking up from a coma. One night, maybe 2 weeks after I had closed the door on Lauren for good, I sat at a bar with my old college friend Tyler, nursing a whiskey and telling him everything, not the sanitized version, but the real story, sharp and raw. When I finished, he didn't say much. Just clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "About time you realized you were married to a hurricane in lipstick." We laughed real, ugly laughter, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. I didn't wonder where Lauren was that night. I didn't care if she cried herself to sleep or spun new lies trying to salvage whatever scraps she could. I was too busy living. Later that week, a lawyer finalized the separation papers I had quietly filed. No drawn-out divorce war. No screaming matches over property. We had a prenup, ironic considering Lauren had insisted on it at the time to protect her own future empire, so she walked away with little more than her personal belongings and a battered reputation. There would be no apology tour. No redemption arc. No reunion. Lauren was a chapter one had torn out of my life with my own hands, and the blank space it left behind didn't scare me. It thrilled me. Some nights, when the city lights buzzed outside my loft windows and I lay awake staring into the darkness, I thought about everything that had happened. Not with regret. Not with longing. But with a kind of brutal gratitude. Lauren had taught me something valuable, though not in the way she had intended. She taught me that some people wear love like a mask, a costume they put on when it benefits them and rip off the second it becomes inconvenient. She taught me that trust isn't something you give away blindly, hoping for the best. It's something earned, tested, proven. And most importantly, she taught me that sometimes losing someone isn't a tragedy. It's freedom.it was a Sunday afternoon, almost 3 weeks after I walked out of the house that used to be ours when she appeared again. I wasn't expecting visitors. I was lounging in the loft, reading, the sunlight thick and heavy through the tall windows, the city noise a distant hum. The buzzer echoed harshly through the apartment. At first, I thought about ignoring it. Most days I would have. But something in the back of my mind stirred, a whisper of unfinished business. I set the book down and pressed the intercom. "Who is it?" There was a long, breathless pause. Then, her voice, thinner now, trembling, unfamiliar. "It's me, Lauren." I stared at the speaker for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the button. A part of me, the part she used to control so effortlessly, wanted to shut it off. Pretend I wasn't home. But another part, colder, more certain, wanted to face her one last time. I buzzed her in. The elevator ride must have been the longest of her life because by the time she reached my door, her knuckles were white from clenching her fists. She looked terrible. Not sick or broken in a way that demanded pity, no. She looked exposed. like a statue left out in the rain too long, the cracks now impossible to hide. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled back hastily. Her clothes, once meticulously chosen, hung on her like they didn't belong to her anymore. It was almost symbolic. Everything she had used to armor herself was gone. She opened her mouth, but for once Lauren, the woman who could spin a lie out of thin air, found herself speechless. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway waiting. Finally, she found words. "I'm not here to fight," she said, voice low. "I'm here to ask for a second chance." There was no anger in her voice, no entitlement, only the fragile, flickering hope of someone clinging to the wreckage. "I lost everything, Dan," she said. "The job, the clients, my friends. I don't even have a place to live anymore." I said nothing. Let her fill the silence with her own unraveling. "I made a mistake," she went on, tears filling her eyes. "The biggest mistake of my life. And I kept making it worse. I see that now. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." Her voice cracked on the last word. Gone. She reached out hesitantly, fingers trembling like she was trying to bridge a gap she had carved herself. "I'm not asking you to forget everything," she said. "I know I don't deserve that. But maybe we could start again. Just talk. Try." I studied her carefully. Not the tears, not the desperation, but the woman beneath all of it. The woman who had laughed behind my back. The woman who had kissed another man while wearing my ring. The woman who had humiliated me without a second thought, convinced she would never face consequences. And I realized Lauren didn't miss me. She missed the life I gave her. The safety, the status, the shield. She didn't love me. She loved what I represented. And now, stripped of everything, she was trying to crawl back. Not because she had changed, but because she had nowhere else to go. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded across my chest. "You're right," I said slowly. "You did lose everything." Hope flickered across her face. "But not because of me," I added. "You destroyed it yourself." Her mouth opened, a protest ready to spill out, but I didn't give her the chance. "You thought you could cheat, lie, humiliate, and still have me standing here waiting for you when the rest of the world turned its back." I shook my head. "You were wrong." Tears streamed freely down her cheeks now. She wasn't even trying to hide it. "I know," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve it. But I love you." The words hung between us, dead before they even reached me. "You loved the idea of me," I corrected. "But the real me? You couldn't even be bothered to respect him." Her shoulders sagged like the last piece holding her upright had finally snapped. "I'm sorry," she said, broken. "I'm not," I replied. And then I did the one thing that ended it completely. I stepped back and closed the door. Not slammed, not shouted, just closed softly, firmly, finally. I stood there for a long time, listening as she broke down on the other side. Soft, desperate sobs that would once have gutted me. Now they meant nothing. She had made her choice. I had made mine. Outside, the city kept breathing, alive and oblivious. The world didn't end because Lauren fell apart. And neither did I. The days after I closed that door felt different. Not empty, not heavy, but clear, sharp, almost painful in their rawness. Like breathing cold air after being trapped in a burning house. There were no dramatic moments of collapse. No late-night weakness where I almost called her. No endless scrolling through old photos, trying to find some version of her that still deserved saving. She was gone. And for the first time in a very long time, I was no longer trying to drag her ghost behind me. I went back to work, quietly picking up the pieces of a life she had tried to shatter. It was harder than I expected, not because of the work itself, but because everything felt new again. Small things caught me off guard, the freedom to plan my weekends without negotiations, the way my coworkers treated me with quiet respect now, the absence of that constant, gnawing doubt that had lived in my gut for years. Lauren had always been there, subtly eroding my confidence, my dreams, my voice, not with fists, but with 1,000 tiny cuts of contempt. A look here, a snide remark there. A slow, deliberate conditioning that made me question if I was ever enough. But now? Now I was enough for myself. Sometimes people talk about closure like it's a moment, a big, cinematic event where everything makes sense and all the pain washes away. It's not like that. Closure is silent. It's in the way you stop reaching for someone in your sleep. It's in the way you don't flinch when you hear their name. It's in the way you can walk past the wreckage they left behind without feeling the need to pick through the ruins. One evening, about a month after Lauren tried to come back, I found myself walking through the city alone. No destination. No plan. The air was crisp, filled with the distant smells of street food and rain-soaked concrete. The noise of the world moved around me, cars, laughter, music, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of it again, not just watching through glass. I stopped by a bookstore and wandered inside, letting the soft hush of paper and old wood settle around me. It wasn't much, just a small, dusty shop tucked between a cafe and a laundromat, but it felt like a place where new beginnings could grow quietly without permission. I picked up a random novel, something I normally wouldn't read, and stood there flipping through the pages. Not because I needed distraction, but because I could. Because my life was mine again. Not shared with someone who saw me as a background character in her personal drama. Leaving Lauren wasn't the end of me. It was the start of the version of me that had been buried under her expectations, her disdain, her betrayal. And if there's anything I've learned, truly, painfully learned, it's this: you don't owe loyalty to someone who trades your trust for their own amusement. You don't owe forgiveness to someone who weaponizes your love against you. And you don't owe a second chance to someone who destroyed the first one with open eyes and a laughing mouth. Love is not supposed to feel like walking on glass, always one wrong word away from bleeding. Love is not supposed to be earned by shrinking yourself smaller and smaller until there's nothing left to break. Real love lifts you. Real love honors you. And when you find yourself giving everything to someone who only ever takes, it's not noble to stay. It's survival to leave. As I left the bookstore that night, the novel tucked under my arm, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even sad. I was free. And that freedom tasted sweeter than any fake forgiveness Lauren could have ever offered. She had humiliated me at my highest moment. She had betrayed me with ruthless carelessness. But I had something she would never touch again: myself. My future. My peace. And no one, not her, not anyone, would ever take that from me again.